right, so good morning, everyone. I guess it's afternoon now. My name is Karen Ravago Ballarat, and I'm the Director of Alumni Professional Engagement here at the UCSB Alumni Affairs Office. Welcome to day 7, I think it is, of the Gaucho Professionals Expo 2020. We're really excited to have you all here, and I'm really excited for this session. If you didn't know, we are doing this for the first time virtually. Last year, we held this event in LA in person, and our speaker today is actually the only person from last year's expo who I invited back for this year because we loved him so much. So really excited to have Fernando on board with us today. So just a couple of quick housekeeping things. We are recording the session and we'll post it afterwards. Everyone's on mute right now, but feel free to submit questions for Fernando into the chat as they come up. Feel free to turn your cameras on so that we can see you out in the audience. But other than that, we'll have some great information to share today. So with that, I will turn it over to Fernando. Fernando, before you kick off, we'd love to hear a little bit about you and your journey from UCSB and how you got into grad school admissions before you start sharing your wisdom with everyone.
Sure, thank you. Thank you all for having me. I know that we have an hour and it's the lunch hour, so well, it's not the lunch hour, but I'll try and make this as engaging as possible. But I'm Fernando Pena. I really love admissions work, and I've been in the field for about 10 years now. Mostly actually in graduate admissions. The position I hold now is the first time that I'm actually pivoting a little bit outside of graduate admission. But I graduated from UCSB in 2010 with a BA in Chicano Studies and Education and Applied Psychology. I became an admissions counselor right away, right after that. And then I went on to USC for about 7 years, working in graduate and undergraduate admission. And it was mostly graduate, working with faculty, PhD programs, master's programs, all of that. And then I became director of admission at the UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television, where I also managed their highly, highly selective graduate programs. And from there, I went to Claremont Graduate University. So where it's all graduate school all the time. And now I'm the director of admission at San Francisco State. So definitely happy to be here with all of you and to really kind of help you in your journey and answer any of the questions that you may have from one gaucho to another. So I do have a few slides that I want to share. And this is just mostly to guide us in conversation. You'll actually see that the slides are kind of old, but I think they'll help. And then as you kind of start thinking of questions that you want to ask, feel free to put them into the chat box, and then I'll address it. Oops, I turned off my video. I'll address it as we move forward. So let me put up my slides if I can figure this out. I'm using a PC right now, and I never do that. I always use a Mac. I don't do PCs, but I work for Cal State, and that's what we have right now. So give me 1 second while I figure this out. Oops. So can you see this right?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. So you saw, as I mentioned, I graduated from UCSB, and my current role is in Director of Admission at San Francisco State. My admissions experience is pretty lengthy, and a lot of it has to do with graduate admission. So I really feel that I can really help you in your journey and how you kind of start choosing if you really want to go to grad school, right? A lot of people start thinking about this as straight out of undergrad. I actually didn't. I waited 2 years after I graduated from UCSB before I made the move. I wanted to make sure that I had some professional capital, I would always call it, and kind of making sure that I understood what grad program I really wanted to pursue. And I know that that's a question that a lot of people always tend to have. So kind of leading right into that. So when is the right time, right? I think a lot of us start to consider that. Some of us have been outside of our undergrad for a couple of years. It's so funny because I just had a conversation with my friend this morning who's thinking about doing an MBA, but he's been far removed from undergrad for over 10 years. And you really have to consider consider a lot when it comes to that, right? Can I really jump in? Is this really the right time? You know, my career goals, is it feasible for me right now, even with COVID? Like, is this something that I should tackle on right now? Can I afford it? And then the desired lifestyle. And for me, I can tell you that when I graduated from UCSB and I started as an admissions counselor, I knew that I wanted to move up really quickly. Um, and I wanted to, hold on, give me one second. And I wanted to make sure that I had as much capital as I possibly could. So I made the decision to apply. I was like, this is not gonna happen if I do not have a master's program. So I applied to USC, I applied to NYU, I got into both, but I chose USC because of the faculty. And then from there, I kind of went crazy because I decided that, I was brilliant and hot shit. And oh, sorry, we're recording this. And that I wanted to do this full time. So a full-time program and a full-time work. So I had class from 4 to 7, work from 8 to 4, and then class from 4 to 7, and then class from 7 to 10. I was insane. And then I was doing admissions for USC, which meant that I was recruiting all over the world. So I was in planes reading, I was in planes doing my homework, I was in hotel rooms being zoomed into courses, into my classes. So it was kind of insane. Something had to give, right, for my lifestyle. And unfortunately, that was gym. So that was like the fattest I've ever been at that time. But I felt like I made the right decision because, again, I did not want to lose my professional capital as I took this on. I wanted to work. A lot of students, in higher education programs wanted to go into GA ships, which is totally fine. I didn't want to do that. So the choosing the right time is I think, a really critical component and question that we all have to ask ourselves. Graduate school first, work later, right? There are some advantages in there, and even now you may be feeling burnt out, right? As we kind of go on with COVID and everything that's happening. And if you're still in undergrad, now, that's clearly evident. A lot of people go straight into undergrad programs right away, and that's totally fine. But just be ready for that work, right? And be ready that, know that it is going to take a lot from you and energy, and you may not even know what you really want to do, right? And you really have to do your research and really understand what this degree program is getting you. And we're going to go into a couple of slides later and you'll see what I mean. And then we have, work first and school later, kind of like I did, right? And getting that clarity about the profession that you want to go into. That's what I wanted to do. I knew that after working at UCSB admissions, that this is what I wanted to continue in the realm of admissions. So a higher ed program was perfect for me. For those of you that, are thinking about different industries, UCSB's location is also kind of a deterrent in that, right? There aren't a lot of major industries in Santa Barbara if you choose to stay there. So you're gonna have to, go to some major city or figure that out if you wanna get that experience. But otherwise, you can figure it out. But know that there's also a deterrent in that, right? Let's say you start working and all of a sudden you've been working for 10 years and you realize that you haven't gotten your master's, right? And then you want to go into this promotion and you want to apply for all these positions that require a master's, or the competitor, which I've been in a lot of situations, has a PhD or an EDD or doesn't even have a master's. And I feel like in a lot of the positions that I've gotten, I've become the clear person because I do have a master's degree. One of the tools and things that I always talk about is, when I talk about grad school, is really understanding your degree. And for me, this really didn't come into fruition until I actually worked at USC. And a lot of you, if you know a lot about USC, you realize that they have over 200 master's programs. And it's kind of crazy. They have a zillion of them, and they are very different, right, in what they give you and what you get from them, right? So really, you go to grad school to specialize, right? And you really want to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into, and obviously everything that comes from that. So there's highly specialized programs, professional schools that include dental, medical, vet school, law school, business schools, they're all very different, and they all offer very different degrees, right? An MA or an MS, right? A master's in education, an MBA, an MSW. There are other MAs within those fields, like an MA in education. And a lot of people always tend to ask me, what is the difference? You know, if you're getting an MA in education versus a master's in education. I know it sounds funny, but that is a huge difference there in policy and in structure of your program. MA programs, think about it this way, and PhD programs are like the bread and butter of academia, right? Those are generally led by the university academic senate, and they get to decide who does what and what the structure for those programs are like, because they're voted by the faculty, and they have any changes or any request has to go through the formal academic senate process, and those are all MA PhD programs. Anything else after that, an MED, an MBA, an MSW, MFA, all of that, those are professional programs. And what that usually means is that there's a lot of leeway in what faculty can do. They can create as many professional programs as they want without usually the approval of the academic senate, right? So the schools that are granting you this degree, so for example, the School of Education at USC is granting you the Master in Education, but USC itself, the university, is granting you the MA and the PhD, if that makes any sense, right? So everything else that falls under that, the rules, who reads applications, all of that comes into play. So know that there is a huge difference in those programs and who controls them, who that faculty academic senate are, who makes the decisions, and how the admissions process tends to work within those programs as well. Master's programs are typically obviously 1 to 2 year programs. Some are actually 3. And just know that a lot of master's programs now at this level are going towards the 1-year route. So that's something that you should definitely consider, because the cost of obviously graduate school is skyrocketing. So you should start looking at more optimal choices for you within the 1-year realm. Like I started in a 2-year program and my master's program, and then about last year or 2 years ago, it turned into a 1-year. And I was really pissed about that. But anyway, that's another conversation. And then doctoral programs, there's a lot, there's tons of them too. There's EDDs, PhDs, a JD, right? The PhD is a traditional doctoral program, again, highly valued and highly regarded by the academic senate and by universities. A lot of PhDs are actually fully funded. So at USC, for example, they're highly competitive programs because they're fully funded for 4 to 5 years plus a stipend. So that means that they only admit about 12 people or 10 people a year. Other programs, professional programs, don't have such high, rates of admission, or low rates of admission. They're a little bit friendlier and they're shorter. So for example, an EDD is actually 2 to 3 years as opposed to the whole 5. And the dissertation is slightly structured a little differently from a PhD program. The application process is slightly differs by programs. So just know that and understand that masters require some, variation. They might not require the GRE, those standardized tests, letters of rec. I always tell people whatever program that you're applying to, one of my tidbits of advice is to work your way backwards. So if you know that the deadline is going to be next December, then give yourself enough time to start thinking about when you're going to start processing your application, when you're actually going to submit it. And more importantly, if it does require the GRE, give yourself at least 2 or 3 times to take it, right? And I think you can't even take the GRE. You have to wait a few months until you take it again. So you have to put that into consideration. So if your program deadline is in December, you should start taking your GRE probably in the summer. And then give yourself enough time to be able to take it again if you're not happy with your score. And that's if you're applying to a highly, highly competitive program. Does that make sense? I see someone scratching their head. So take that into consideration as you start working towards your deadlines. What's involved in graduate admissions? There's a lot, and it all differs by the university or the school that you're applying to. So really do your research. And again, and I mentioned to you those kind of tidbits of info on the Academic Senate and who reads applications. Some schools, some universities use faculty admission committees. Others do not. Other staff members read them. So just know that, that it just kind of depends. And that's a question you can ask. Just ask the recruiter, be like, who reads your application? Or who makes the decision? And just know that if it's a faculty admissions committee, it really is a faculty admissions committee. And I've worked with tons of them throughout the years. And they read your application, they write notes, they discuss you, and they discuss your work and the additions and the value that you can bring into the program. So know that and do your research when it comes to talking to the recruiters on what's involved in their process for their school. Admission tests, like I mentioned, the GRE, there's tons of them. There's the MCAT, there's I think a test for vet, there's the, the tons of other tests. So just know that you know which one you have to take. And again, give yourself time. The applications, it's pretty kind of straightforward for all programs. Just make sure that you start working on it early. Letters of recommendation are, I think, a key factor in those, depending on which kind of program that you're applying to. Some people that, work or that have been removed from undergrad might not be able to get a faculty letter of recommendation, and that's okay. Faculty generally know that. If you've been like 5 years removed from undergrad, they know that you can't really contact your professors and say, hey, can you write me a letter of rec? So they understand that. So know that. So don't freak out about that. Just get any professional letter of rec that you can. Your statement of purpose is absolutely most critical, important part of your application. Some schools actually provide you questions, others don't. Others just tell you write 2 pages and submit a 2-page statement of purpose. So just be ready for that. And if you don't know where to go or how to kind of take it or lean it, you can always ask faculty members, for their advice. And it'll kind of put you in contact with them as well. Some schools require a writing sample. So for example, USC's, a lot of their programs do require a writing sample. So just make sure that if you have any papers or anything academic that you can submit, that's great. If you don't, if you've been far removed, again, any professional writing sample that you can submit would suffice. And then just know that there's tons of other deadlines that come from it. Some programs are rolling, so meaning that they're accepting applications all year round, and that's a lot of master's programs do that. So just know that the process will move pretty quickly as soon as you start submitting your application. As soon as you submit your application or start talking to a recruiter, they will not stop contacting you until you submit. So some of you might have already been doing that. I mentioned grad school tests, so there's a ton of them. Just know which one you have to take. And again, work your way backwards, right? And give yourself the opportunity to take a couple of them again if you have to. I actually took the GRE 3 times. I really thought that I wanted to pursue a PhD program. I still kind of do, and that's exactly what I did. I took it once, I did horrible. I took it again, I did horrible, even worse than the first time. So just give yourself the time to take it. A lot of people always ask me big name schools, pros and cons. And there is a lot. When I was in grad school, they gave me a book too, where you go matters and where you work matters. And I think in some instances it does. Big schools can provide actual funding for you. I call them pillars of the profession. The reason I chose USC over NYU was literally because of the faculty, because I saw the faculty list and I said, I want to work with this person and I actually want to be guided by her or by him. And I really took that to heart. And as soon as I went into SC, I became a TA. I did all of that stuff. They kind of guided me in my research. I also did research in there as well. So big name schools draw big name faculty. So that's a pro. But it's also very competitive to be admitted, right? Depending on which program, you're applying to. Um, Funding. So I mentioned to you, large private universities usually big name fully fund PhD programs. There are also universities like Claremont, for example, Claremont Graduate University that does not fund PhD programs fully. So just know that you're going to have to pay or substantially invest in that. Funding is usually tied to faculty mentors. So, you know, if you're applying to PhD programs or doctoral programs, know that that's why they always tell you to contact faculty members, because the funding is tied to them, right? So they will take you on as their mentee and you will be doing research with them. You will work on their own research, and that comes with a lot of benefits to you. You know, you will be added in their publications, all of that as you kind of continue to build your own rapport. Master's programs funding varies, but for the most part, there is none. And that's generally across the board, depending on, and yeah, and I don't even think depending on which university, for the most part, all master's programs are fully funded. I mean, funded personally, and it varies. So I actually got a scholarship from USC for my master's program. I was working full time, right? So I was able to get the master's program partially paid for some units because I was working for USC. So that's also another option. But for the most part, there is no funding like that for master's programs. Um, grant writing is also essential. I think if you want to go into a PhD program, so that can help you. If there's scholarships, there's grants that can support you. And usually universities obviously have a grant office. Like there's the Fulbright, there's a ton of other grants that you can apply to. And there's also a ton of other research organizations that provide grants and fellowships. So you definitely want to do your research with that. And they do provide it for master's programs too. So, you know, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but you have to apply. And I think that's kind of like the last general info slide. So I'll start taking your questions now if I can see them. Oh, here we go.
Don't be shy, folks. What kinds of questions do you have? Fernando, while we're waiting, yeah, can you share a little bit about what's happening with COVID in terms of folks applying to grad school? Is it like, hey, there aren't any jobs out there, I'm gonna go to grad school? Or is it, well, I'm in a job, I have a job, it's a stable job, let me not leave and go to grad school? Like what kinds of things are people thinking about right now?
I think a lot of people are starting to head towards professional programs a little more. So like there's an uptick in MBA programs right now because people are thinking about, you know, you want to obviously be as skillful as you possibly can. So MBA programs, those type of programs are gaining applications, you know, what others are not. And I mentioned to you 1-year programs are also all the rave right now, you know, because I actually had a few students from that were my interns start grad programs that were 1-year programs now. As soon as COVID hit, they were like, I'm going to do this. And I thought that was a good idea. I have one now that I just wrote a letter of rec for that's at Riverside on a 1-year program. And so it's like, might as well, you're at home. So, well, you're supposed to be at home, right? So I think that is a good thing to do and to consider while we're doing all of this. Someone asked, how can you determine ROI on grad school, for an instance, an MBA? There is a couple of answers to that. Schools are actually supposed to do, I forgot what it's called. And I can't believe I'm blanking out on this. They post their jobs, right? And what the actual ROI is, and how successful their students are, especially for MBA programs. They're required to do so. If they want to be accredited and if they want to do participate in all of that stuff. So a lot of universities try to hide it. Or a lot of universities try and do very specific wording, very specific ways or very creative ways on how they word, you know, how people are getting jobs. And you really have to dig down and dig deep and ask questions, because if they're not highly ranked or if they're not up there, they're going to try and hide this info from you. And you want to make sure that that you can figure it out. And again, the ROI too, this is kind of the benefit to a bigger name school, right? Because bigger name schools have bigger partnerships. There's corporate partnerships. There's a bunch of other stuff that kind of comes from it. So just know that there's a lot of different ways to get ROI, your personal ROI from the program, right? What you felt from it, what you liked, what you didn't like. But then there's actual deliverables that universities have to post. And I can't remember where John asked where to find that. But if you email me, I'll find you an example of what I'm talking about. There's another question. I know the average entrance age for MBA students is about 27 because it's used to pivot careers. What are some popular exit careers from MBA programs? I don't know actual careers, but what I can kind of tell you about pivoting and what's kind of helpful, even in the MBA programs now, is that they're switching. Highly specialized programs are all the rave right now too. So an MBA program traditionally gives you finance, gives you all of these other, econ, gives you all of these, different subjects that you may not want to learn. So now highly specialized programs are there too. Like for example, a Master of Communication Management. So that's a USC program, a master's in entrepreneurship and innovation, right? It's not an MBA, but it's kind of giving you those similar fundamentals without the econ, without the hard math and analytical practice that they're usually used to. And people start pivoting into that. And it just kind of depends what helps if you're kind of out of undergrad for several years, what your schedule is like. There's also flex MBA programs, that allow you to do it on your own pace. So there's a lot on that. But you can also look at the school, each individual school, to see where their students are working right after they graduate. And they're also supposed to be posting that too if they're an accredited MBA school. Another question, what's the best way to set yourself apart when applying to a program which is different from your BA? My writing sample and references would be unrelated to the potential programs. So I think in this, you really have to bring in faculty into play. So by really personalizing with them and showing your interest, because they will share that. And if they were part of the admissions committee or if they were the faculty director, even better, right? So a lot of so let's say you're applying to this master's in sociology, go to their website, see who the faculty are. You'll see who is the director of the master's in sociology program. That's the person that you want to email because that person controls the faculty admissions committee. They are the ones that you want to showcase your interest and highlight and say, this is, and start the conversation. I don't think there's anything wrong with sending your resume or your CV and saying, hi, I'm interested in your program. I've been far removed from, whatever, this is nowhere near where my BA is. I would love to chat with you about this program and my interest and, how could it be a good fit for me? I guarantee you that they're going to email you back. Sometimes they might not, or they might refer you to someone else. But I think there's nothing wrong with that. Especially during these times, they are in desperate need for grad students. So I think that's something that would be great for you to do and to really will set yourself apart by chatting with this faculty director that controls the admissions committee. And if they like you, obviously they will remember your name. And shoot them some reminders here and there and say, oh, thanks for your recommendations. I did this, I did that, and kind of update them so that they can kind of continue to remember who you are. Ooh, this is a great question. How important is an applicant's undergrad GPA compared to their other considerations taken in a grad school application? So some grad schools actually calculate your graduate GPA. And when I mean graduate GPA is your upper division GPA, so your last 2 years of undergrad. And I can tell you for a fact that mine was way higher than my cumulative GPA. And some schools kind of calculate that for you when you're inputting your grades or your GPA in their application system. So that's kind of a cool thing. But as I mentioned to you, I actually calculated it myself for my UCSB transcripts because I was so nervous. I was like, I'm not going to get in. It's, my major GPA was way higher than my cumulative GPA, because we have to take all these stupid GEs that nobody likes, right? And so I calculated myself, and guess what? I actually added it on my application. So there's like sections for other comments or other notes. I put that in there. I kid you not. And I put, what my cumulative GPA is, my major GPA, and I also put my graduate GPA or my upper division GPA, just so that they can see that, there is progression and that I did better and that I was more highly focused on my major GPA than, some grade I took in some stupid G that I didn't like, right? So universities are different in that, and that's another question that you can ask the recruiter. But I wouldn't worry about it. Just be ready for that conversation. If you're applying to a PhD program, know that depending on how far removed you are from your undergrad, there will be a little bit more of an emphasis on your GPA. So if you just graduated from an undergrad, the likelihood of them looking at your GPA and considering your GPA is much higher, right? Because you have no professional work experience, none of that. So just know that, and learn how to pivot and again, personalize with that faculty director and share your concerns and say, hey, this is the GPA that I got. I'm concerned that, I would love your advice. Or if this is something that I should be concerned about during my application, I would email them that. Cool. Let me see. Andres, I hope that answered your question. I've seen that the GRE is not being offered in a lot of places due to COVID. How is that affecting admissions and applications? So yes, a lot. And I actually did that because I was still in Claremont when COVID started, and I waived all the GMAT for all of our applicants myself. So it's not really affecting that much. If anything, it's probably helping you. So I would really, start considering that as an option. Anytime that you do not have to take some standardized test to prove you're academically qualified, I say do it. But I also think that this is really going to change the landscape of graduate admissions and undergrad admissions too. Because you're admitting classes and you're knowing that the quality is there without an actual number. So I think this is going to help. If you can do it now, you definitely should. But this is having an effect for many years to come. So, universities aren't meeting their enrollment numbers. So none of that is happening. So, they're going to be in need of applicants and they're going to do whatever they can to accommodate. Know that. So, and you can ask for accommodations. Okay, I have another question, private. How far does the backing from a faculty member play into being admitted into a program, but working under another faculty member? What recommendations do you have when the relationship is more work-based than academic-based? That's kind of a tricky one that you're just gonna have to let faculty members play out, but I would be very careful in how you maneuver that. Because some faculty members can be very territorial, right? And especially if this is not the faculty director of the program and you're dealing with another faculty member, and this faculty member that maybe is not ranked, right? Maybe is not tenured and is a newer faculty member, maybe they're clinical professor instead of an academic, research professor. They're not probably going to take their considerations, very highly. So it's just a politics game. And I think you should just be very transparent before that hurts you. I hope that answers your question. But these faculty committees are really close knit. There's usually only a couple of them. They all get to see, depending on which university, they might see the comments that the other faculty member entered for you, and vice versa. So just know that and how you kind of play those relationships. What are the pros and cons of taking the GMAT versus the GRE? Oh, that's a great question. I've never taken the GMAT, but I can tell you that the GRE is probably way easier. You know, because it's not so much heavy on the, and maybe someone in here has taken the GMAT. You know, but the GRE is probably not heavy on the quantitative work or analysis that goes in. So, and that's something that I've heard, and I was the director of admissions for a business school. So I would take whatever is the most comfortable for you and really ask questions to people that have taken the tests and figure that out, and which experience is going to be a little bit better. But I have a feeling that the GMAT is a little bit more extensive than the GRE because it is testing just graduate business school knowledge as opposed to the GRE, which is testing just general, well, what they call general, you know, education. That was the last one that was in the chat box.
Oh, wait, there's one more. From Maria, I've been looking into a few online programs, but I feel that there's a stigma with online programs not providing the same level of education. Can you go into the pros and cons of getting a master's online?
You know, Maria, I think before COVID, my answer would have been different for you. You know, because I think before COVID, there was a huge stigma on online programs. And USC has several of them. But the reality is that, you know, you might feel the stigma as a current student and, you know, because resources are different. Your experience as a student is not the same as someone that's on campus. So you might feel that. But the reality is that as soon as you graduate, nobody cares. No one is going to ask you if this is an online program or if you know, did it or not, online or on campus. So yeah, but now this is obviously more acceptable now because of COVID, right? We're all living in this reality and in this virtual world. So I think a lot of schools, for example, the one that I was working for, Claremont Graduate University, were really reluctant on going the online route. But this is opening a whole nother door of international students, international diversity across the country, right here, U.S. diversity, you know, for people to apply and to enter these programs online. So I really do believe that stigma is no longer going to be relevant because this is going to be part of the way to go now for a lot of schools. So you go ahead and you apply the online program. I have a private question. If we are planning on entering grad school later in our career, is it worth studying for and taking the GRE GMAT now, or is it easier to wait? Great question, and I totally forgot to mention that. I think the GRE is good for 10 years, 5 years, one of those two. I think it's 5 years. So if you're planning on doing this from within 5 years, and right now your mind is at the fresh state, do it now. That's just my recommendation. Do it now and you will be good for 5 years and you don't have to worry about this damn test ever again for the next 5 years until you apply. And there's a lot of resources for you too. UCLA Extension has GRE course. It's cheaper than like Kaplan or whatever, or all these other private organizations. But UCLA Extension offers these courses too at a cheaper rate. I would definitely take advantage of that if I was you. And they offer them all throughout the year. And I think they're like 10 weeks or like whatever. And to give you another point, I would think about when you want to take the GRE and then sign up for that class and do it literally right before, like end the class the week before you're going to take the GRE so that your skills and your strategies are in your head. That was actually the last question.
And I threw my 2 cents into the chat because that's what they pay me for, is to remind you all about your great alumni network. So a couple of things that I put into the chat. I don't know if many of you know that you can go into LinkedIn with this link that I have here, and it'll pull up everyone on LinkedIn who has UCSB on their LinkedIn profile. And then from there, you can do a search for alums who went to the grad school that you're thinking about, alums who got MBAs, alums who got PhDs. Feel free to reach out to people and say, hey, I'm a gaucho, found you on LinkedIn. You know, I saw that you went to UNC Chapel Hill for your MBA. Would love to chat with you more about that and see if people get back to you. And the Gaucho Network link that I put in there as well is our UCSB specific version of LinkedIn. So there's definitely less people in there that are on LinkedIn, but all of the people in Gaucho Network have specifically said that they are willing to give career advice, willing to help out fellow gauchos. So definitely do that while you're doing your research, because again, I think Fernando would say that you know, everyone who's selling the program to you will definitely give you all of the shiny, great things about the programs. But if you reach out to a fellow alum and really ask them like, hey, do you feel like you made the right decision? What were some challenges? What's your experience? And really asking folks to give you a more realistic perspective. They'll definitely do that for you. So
And ask them,
definitely.
did they actually like the program?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people don't, you know, a lot of people have this preconceived notion of what graduate school is like, right? Because we're fed that as an undergrad and our professors tell us it's really hard and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But then you go into this highly specialized program that you love and that you're passionate about. And the reality is that it's not that crazy hard, right? It's just other balances that kind of come into play. So I would really reach out to the Gaucho Network for that because, you know, you can literally ask them a question about their grad program. John, I just saw your question. I don't quote me on this, but I know obviously just general knowledge that the GMAT is a little bit more tailored towards business analytics and probably more heavily on the quantitative side. And the GRE kind of has an equal basis on both. And it tests more general knowledge, but you definitely want to do your research on both. I've never taken the GMAT, and I'll tell you that right now, and I probably never will. So definitely do your research on that. And some schools do, most business schools now are actually will take both. But if I was you, I would probably lean for the GRE just because I know that it's a little bit more on the qualitative side. Any other questions? I hope this was helpful. I think
Yeah, thank you so much. Fernando, would you mind popping your email into the chat again real quick? Would appreciate that. So while we're doing that, thanks to everyone for joining us today. I know we know it's a crazy time out there and lots of things are going on. So definitely stay in touch with us and with your fellow gauchos. Let us know how we can help you get connected while you're doing your research. So after this, you will be getting a quick follow-up survey from us. So make sure to fill that out and we'll keep everyone posted. You know, we're pivoting to with, you know, we used to do a lot of in-person alumni events and nobody's getting together in person and shaking hands in person anymore. So we'll be doing lots more virtually for folks to be able to join us for webinars and talks like this. So reach out, let us know what kinds of topics you would love to hear from alumni on, and we'll definitely be working on those things. So with that, thanks for joining us. Thank you so much, Fernando. You know, he mentioned that this job at San Francisco State is relatively new. So congratulations on your new position, especially getting a new job in this COVID time. I'm sure it's a crazy time to be starting a new job. So congratulations on that. It's always great to see gauchos doing great things and being able to spotlight the good work that you're doing out there. So thanks everyone. That'll do it for today. And hopefully we will see you soon at another virtual event. Thanks.
Bye everybody.